The research facility was quiet, except for the hum of the alien machines working in the background. Alien scientists were gathered in a room, their eyes focused on a large screen displaying live data. On the screen, a human figure lay unconscious, surrounded by several high-tech devices. Dr. Zethar, one of the leading alien researchers, stared at the screen, his eyes wide with disbelief. He had seen many things in his time, but nothing like this. The human subject had just endured injuries that should have killed any other living being. The fact that he was still alive was both puzzling and terrifying. How is this possible? Dr. Zethar muttered to himself, tapping on the console in front of him. The data was clear. The human had been stabbed through the chest by an energy blade that would have pierced the heart of any normal species, and yet the readings showed no signs of death. No organs had failed. The human's heart continued to beat steadily, as if the injury had never happened. Across the room, another scientist, Shura, looked over Dr. Zethar's shoulder. She too was stunned. "The system is malfunctioning," she suggested. "This can't be accurate." Dr. Zethar shook his head, his brow furrowed in confusion. "It's not malfunctioning, Shura. This data is correct. The human, he shouldn't be alive. And yet, he is." He leaned closer to the screen, zooming in on the human's body. The alien team had watched as the human had been injured in battle, an event that had been recorded for study. What shocked them all was not just the injury, but how quickly the human began to recover. Even after sustaining such a life-threatening wound, the human's body seemed to be healing at an incredible rate. "The healing process is beyond anything we've seen," Jura said, her voice filled with awe. "How can his body regenerate this fast? His cells should be breaking down, not rebuilding." "This is impossible," Dr. Zethar replied, his voice low. "No species, not even the most resilient ones we studied, can survive injuries like this. And yet, this human does." The rest of the alien scientists gathered around the screen, whispering among themselves, each one baffled by what they were seeing. They had come across many species throughout the galaxy, all with unique abilities. Some could regenerate limbs, others had advanced healing factors, but none had ever exhibited the ability to survive a wound like this. And yet, here was a human, small in stature compared to the massive, armored creatures from the neighboring planets, showing the kind of strength and resilience that no one could explain. Dr. Zethar turned to face his team, his eyes narrowing in thought. "Perhaps we've underestimated humanity," he said quietly. "Perhaps they're more than just an evolving species. Maybe there's something else, something we haven't yet discovered about them." Jura frowned, looking at the data once more. "But how do we explain this? Can it be that their bodies have evolved beyond anything we've ever known? Or is there something else, something unknown, that's keeping him alive?" There was a long silence as the scientists pondered this question. They knew the galaxy's most powerful species. They had studied the mightiest warriors, the most resilient creatures, but nothing had prepared them for this. Dr. Zethar stared at the screen. The human's heart was still beating strong. His blood pressure was normal. Despite the injury that should have incapacitated him, this human was not only surviving but thriving. How? Why? "This can't be the result of just physical strength," Jura said, breaking the silence. "There's something more. Maybe it's his mental state. Maybe it's his will to survive that's playing a role." Dr. Zethar turned slowly, considering her words. "Willpower, yes, it's possible. Perhaps humanity's strength lies not just in their biology, but in their mind. Their determination to survive, to fight, to overcome challenges no matter how impossible." The thought left a chill in the air. For the first time, the alien scientists began to wonder, was it possible that humanity's greatest strength was something that no other species had? Something not found in their DNA or biology, but in their very soul. Jura spoke up again. "If this is true, then we have a problem. We've been studying them, believing that they were just another primitive species, weak and easy to control. But if their minds, if their determination is what allows them to survive impossible injuries. Dr. Zethar interrupted, his voice growing more serious. Then we need to reconsider everything. This human is not just any soldier. He is a force to be reckoned with. The room fell silent as the implications of their discovery began to sink in. The alien scientists had underestimated the humans, assuming that their physical weaknesses and small stature made them an easy target. But now, as they watched this human survive an injury that should have killed him, they realized they had made a grave mistake. The human subject, still unconscious but alive, slowly began to stir. His breathing was steady, and his pulse was strong. Despite the brutal injury he had suffered, there was no sign of infection, no signs of death. His body was healing itself at an incredible rate. Dr. Zethar leaned forward, his face a mixture of awe and fear. This is just the beginning. If this human's body can survive this, what else can they do? The answer, however, was one that the alien scientists would soon find out, the hard way. The alien research facility buzzed with activity as the days passed, the scientists working tirelessly to unravel the mystery of the human's incredible survival. But even as they studied him, their confusion only deepened. It wasn't just that the human survived a fatal injury, it was how he was doing it. No known species in the galaxy could heal from such wounds so quickly, yet this one human, a mere cadet, seemed to defy all logic. Dr. Zethar paced in front of the medical bay, deep in thought. His team had monitored the human's vitals continuously, and there had been no change in the way his body responded. Despite everything they had tried, nothing seemed to disrupt the healing process. It was as if the human's body was powered by something beyond biology. They had given him every possible medical treatment available to their species, but none had any noticeable effect. The human's body simply healed. Jura, one of the more cautious scientists on the team, looked at Dr. Zethar with an expression of concern. We need to face the facts, Zethar. We can't explain this. There's no way we can measure the healing rate. We've tried using every tool in our arsenal, and still, nothing works. I know, Dr. Zethar replied, his voice heavy with frustration. I've run the simulations, gone over the data again and again. There's nothing like this in any of our records. The human, lying unconscious on the bed, seemed almost too calm, as though he were oblivious to the gravity of the situation. Yet every scan they performed on him showed no abnormalities, no signs of weakness, no signs of a typical recovery pattern. His cells were rapidly regenerating, as if time itself was bending around him. As the hours passed, Dr. Zethar sat by the human's side, watching in stunned silence. For the first time in his life, he was unsure. His entire existence had been built on knowledge that had brought his species to power across the galaxy. But this was beyond anything he had ever encountered. Do you think it's something psychological? Jura asked, her voice quieter now, unsure. Is it possible that the human mind has something to do with this? I mean, his body might just be a vessel. Maybe his mind is the real key to his survival. Dr. Zethar slowly turned to face her. Are you suggesting that a mere human could have developed the ability to override their body's limitations through sheer willpower? Shura didn't flinch. Yes, that's what I'm suggesting. It sounds far-fetched, but look at the facts. This human doesn't just survive, he adapts. No other species we've studied has ever done that. Not like this. The two scientists fell into a deep silence as they both considered the idea. Could it be possible? Was the human mind the key to this? Had they been so focused on the physical aspects of the human body that they overlooked the most critical factor, the will to survive? Dr. Zethar shook his head. It doesn't make sense. We've dealt with species that have stronger bodies, greater endurance, even faster healing. But none have had the ability to push themselves beyond their limits. That's what makes humans different. At that moment, the human cadet stirred on the bed, his eyelids fluttering before opening slightly. The medical team rushed over to check on him. But the human didn't seem to react to their presence. He just lay there, staring at the ceiling as though trying to piece together his surroundings. One of the alien researchers, a younger scientist named Ryler, spoke up. Maybe the key is that humans don't have limits. At least, not in the way we think of them. They can adapt, but they also have an innate ability to endure pain, to ignore it. Perhaps this explains why they heal faster than expected. Dr. Zethar looked down at the human, deep in thought. He had to admit that Ryler's theory was starting to make sense. Every species he'd studied had a breaking point, a limit to how much stress their bodies could take. But humans, it seemed like the more pressure they were under, the more they thrived. Jura nodded slowly. It's like they don't just survive. They learn from their pain. It's as if every injury they endure makes them stronger. Dr. Zethar turned his gaze back to the human cadet. That's the key, isn't it? Humans don't just live. They evolve with every hardship they face. This isn't about biology anymore. It's about adaptability. It's about their spirit, their relentless drive to overcome obstacles. The idea lingered in the air, a species that didn't break under pressure, but adapted and grew stronger with every challenge. No other species in the galaxy had shown that ability. As the hours passed and the human continued to rest, Dr. Zethar's thoughts turned to the possibilities. If humanity could survive injuries that would cripple the most powerful species in the galaxy, what else could they do? What other strengths were hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered? The more he thought about it, the more unsettling it became. This wasn't just a fluke or an anomaly. There was something about humans, something fundamentally different from all other species in the galaxy. And if this human was any indication, humanity's potential was far greater than anyone could have imagined. As the days passed, the alien scientists found themselves both astounded and bewildered. The human cadet, after sustaining injuries that should have left him incapacitated, had started to show signs of life once again. It wasn't just his recovery that stunned them, it was his demeanor. The humans weren't just physically resilient, they were mentally unyielding. Dr. Zethar stood in the observation room, watching through a large glass panel as the cadet sat up in his bed. His eyes were alert, though slightly bloodshot, and his hands rested on the edge of the mattress as if preparing for something. The alien scientists observed him with a mix of fascination and concern. "I can't believe he's awake already," Shura muttered beside him. "How is he even conscious? He was practically dying a few days ago." Dr. Zethar frowned, running his fingers through his tentacles in thought. "It doesn't make sense. Even after all we've seen, I still can't explain how a human can recover this quickly. No other species in the galaxy has such capacity to bounce back from severe injury." Rylor, the young scientist, watched the cadet carefully. "There's something else, Dr. Zethar. He's not acting like any other patient we've ever treated. He seems unfazed. He's fully aware, but there's no panic in him, no confusion. It's almost like he's been through worse." Zethar's eyes narrowed. "You may be right. The way he's reacting. It's as though this isn't the first time he's been through this kind of hardship." Indeed, the cadet's behavior was unusual. While other species, more delicate or advanced in their own right, would have shown visible signs of shock or trauma after such an ordeal, the human cadet seemed almost detached, as though surviving injury wasn't a rare occurrence for him, but rather just another challenge to overcome. "Why aren't they freaking out? If any of us were in his place, we'd be incapacitated," Jura added. "Yet he's already sitting up. He's acting like this is normal." Dr. Zethar could hardly disagree with her observation. The cadet's recovery was far beyond anything they had imagined. His pulse remained steady, his breathing deep but unhurried. There was a calmness to him that made the scientists uneasy. How could a species withstand such pain and trauma without crumbling? How could they endure and yet remain composed? Zethar's thoughts were interrupted by the cadet's sudden movement. The young human, still groggy but functional, swung his legs over the side of the bed and stood up, testing his balance. For a moment, there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by resolve. Slowly but surely, he began to walk, albeit with some unsteadiness, but no signs of significant pain. The human wasn't struggling to walk. He wasn't limping or moving with hesitance. It was as though he had simply endured a minor injury that had already healed. "Does he have some form of biological enhancement?" Jura asked, voicing the concern they were all thinking. "Something that speeds up his healing process." Dr. Zethar shook his head. "I've run all the tests. There's nothing. No enhancements, no altered DNA. His body reacts like any other human's. But somehow, his mind, his willpower, is something else entirely. There's no rational explanation." The cadet stood tall now, walking toward the door of his room. The alien scientist stepped back as he approached, not knowing how to react. He paused, and for a moment, it looked like he was considering something. The human turned to face them, his voice hoarse but steady. "Is this where you tell me I'm the first human you've ever treated?" he asked casually, as if he were having a normal conversation with them. The scientists exchanged uneasy glances. "Yes," Zethar responded, "but we're still trying to understand what's happened. We've never seen anything like this before." The cadet shrugged nonchalantly. "I guess you could say humans are good at surprising people. We don't break that easily." Jura's eyebrows shot up in surprise. You don't seem to be shaken at all." The human smiled faintly, the ghost of a smirk tugging at the corners of his lips. "Shaken? Nah, I'm just getting started." The words hung in the air, charged with an energy that startled the alien scientists. Was he taunting them, or was he simply stating the truth? What was it about humans that allowed them to remain so unshaken by adversity? Zethar studied the human carefully, sensing something in his posture, a confidence, an inner strength that no other species had ever exhibited in the same way. Humans weren't just strong, they were determined, unyielding. Their very nature was a force that could not be easily suppressed, no matter the odds. As the cadet began to walk toward the exit, the scientists remained silent, their thoughts racing. There was no doubt in their minds now. The human species was far more dangerous than any of them had imagined. And perhaps, just maybe, this cadet was the key to understanding why humanity had the strength to overcome even the deadliest of challenges. Zethar watched the human leave the room, his mind still spinning with the mystery before him. What made humans tick? What drove them? And most importantly, why were they so unbreakable? One thing was clear. The more he learned about humanity, the more he realized that their potential was limitless. As the days passed, the alien scientists couldn't shake off the image of the human cadet walking away from them, unfazed and resolute. There was something about him, something primal that they couldn't fully understand. They had seen countless species across the galaxy, species far more advanced and resilient than humans, yet none of them had shown the kind of durability that this cadet did. His body should have been broken, incapacitated, but it wasn't. He was walking, talking, and exhibiting strength far beyond what was normal. Dr. Zethar sat in his office, staring at the vast array of data and test results spread across his desk. His tentacles drummed nervously on the surface as his mind raced. He had analyzed every possible variable. Biological factors, genetics, enhancements, even mental fortitude. Nothing made sense. The results were consistent, but they didn't tell the full story. "Shura, Ryler," Zethar called out, signaling his two colleagues into his office. They entered, their expressions filled with concern, though curiosity lingered behind their eyes. "Doctor, have you had any breakthroughs? Any explanations?" Jura asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Zethar leaned back in his chair, tapping his tentacles thoughtfully. "No. The cadet. He is a mystery. His body is healing far quicker than it should. His mental state, even more so. He's not just surviving. He's adapting. We can't figure out how." Rylor stepped forward, unable to hold his thoughts any longer. What if it's not just his biology? What if his survival isn't about physical strength at all? What if it's his mind, his resolve, his sheer will to live and overcome? Zethar tilted his head, intrigued by the suggestion. You may be onto something, Rylor. We've been focused on his physical recovery, but perhaps his mind is playing a bigger role. But how? Why does his resolve seem so much stronger than any species we've encountered? Jura crossed her arms, clearly frustrated. It's like he's built differently. His body shouldn't be able to handle the injuries he sustained. And yet, not only does he survive, he thrives. Could it really be willpower alone? Dr. Zethar sighed, rubbing his head. I don't know, Jura, but we have to keep observing him. Maybe we'll find something new. We can't just sit here. We have to understand this phenomenon. Meanwhile, on the other side of the facility, the human cadet was going through his daily training. Despite his injuries, his regimen was more intense than anyone had anticipated. The humans, it seemed, were more accustomed to pushing themselves beyond their limits than the aliens had ever imagined. His training sessions were a reflection of that. Endurance drills, resistance exercises, and combat practice. But what stood out most was his attitude. He had a calm focus, never distracted, always in motion. With each passing day, his body healed. But his mind, his unyielding determination, seemed to be what kept him going. Every bruise, every gash, only made him more determined to move forward. He was stubborn, relentless, and nothing could stop him. Jura and Rylor watched from the observation deck as the cadet completed his exercises. They couldn't help but notice how his focus didn't waver, not even for a moment. His posture was perfect, his movements fluid, and his resolve unbreakable. Is he even tired? Jura murmured, astonished. No, Rylor replied, shaking his head. He's not. He just keeps going. It's like he's impossible to stop. Dr. Zethar walked into the observation room, his eyes scanning the cadet's movements with intense scrutiny. He observed for several minutes in silence before speaking. I think we've been wrong. It's not just his physical recovery that's unique. It's his drive. Humans don't just survive. They persevere. They fight. This cadet is a perfect example of what makes humanity formidable. Jura and Rylor exchanged a look. There was a cold realization in their eyes. The cadet was more than just a survivor. He was an embodiment of something greater, a force that defied the galaxy's understanding of survival. Dr. Zethar turned to them, his tone serious. We've seen resilience before, but not like this. His mind isn't just strong, it's indomitable. He pushes past pain, past limits, and it's like he doesn't know the meaning of defeat. Jura nodded slowly, realizing the enormity of what they were witnessing. This isn't just biology. This is something else, something beyond our comprehension. For the first time, Dr. Zethar felt a twinge of fear, a fear of what humanity could potentially become if this resolve was common among their kind. What if this was only the beginning? What if all humans shared this kind of relentless determination? We need to study this, Zethar said firmly. We need to understand this willpower, this mental strength. If humans are capable of this level of resilience, what else could they accomplish? As the cadet finished his training and began to walk toward the exit, the scientists were left standing in awe. What had they just witnessed? They thought they had seen it all, but humans had proved them wrong. They were not just a species to be observed. They were a species to be feared. Whatever happens next, Dr. Zethar thought, humanity will change the course of galactic history, and we may never be able to predict what they'll do next. As the days turned into weeks, the alien scientists continued to study the human cadet with a mixture of fascination and fear. What had started as a simple examination of a curious human anomaly had quickly escalated into something far more complicated and unsettling. Despite their advanced technology and centuries of knowledge, They were unable to grasp the full extent of what made humanity so uniquely powerful. Dr. Zethar, Jura, and Rylor had all witnessed the cadet's abilities firsthand, and the more they observed, the more they realized that humanity wasn't just physically resilient, it was mentally indomitable. This one human had defied every expectation they had, surviving injuries that should have killed him and pushing his body beyond its natural limits without ever showing signs of weakness. It was a problem that had no easy solution. On the surface, the cadet appeared to be just another soldier, young, strong, and determined. But the scientists knew there was something far deeper at play. In all their years of study, they had never encountered anything like it. It wasn't just the cadet's physical capabilities that were remarkable. It was the way he kept going, no matter how much pain or exhaustion he experienced. He seemed to thrive on adversity, to seek it out. One afternoon, Dr. Zethar called for a special meeting with his team. The cadet was scheduled for another round of training, and they needed to determine their next course of action. The question was no longer about his physical recovery. It was about how to unlock the full potential of the human will. "I've been thinking," Zethar began, his voice carrying an uncharacteristic hint of uncertainty. "Perhaps we've been looking at this all wrong. What if it's not just his body that makes him different? What if it's his mind, his drive? What if humanity as a species is capable of pushing past what we thought were the limits of survival?" Jura frowned. "But how? What's causing this? It doesn't make sense. Their biology is nothing special. It's ordinary, even weak compared to ours." Rylor, still deep in thought, added, "True. But what if their minds are the key? What if it's their sense of purpose, their resilience in the face of everything that tries to break them, that makes them unique?" Zethar's eyes widened with realization. That's it. It's their purpose, their drive to protect what they love, to fight against insurmountable odds. That's what makes them so powerful. Their mind, their spirit, everything about them is intertwined with this unyielding desire to never give up. The room fell silent as the team processed Zethar's words. For the first time, they were beginning to understand what set humans apart from every other species in the galaxy. "I've seen it before," Jura said softly, a spark of understanding in her eyes. "Humanity's will isn't just a force of nature. It's a weapon that no amount of strength or technology can match." Rylor nodded. "It's not just about survival. It's about the belief that they can overcome anything. That's the true power of humanity." Dr. Zethar stood up, his thoughts racing. "We've been treating this like an isolated phenomenon. But maybe it's not. What if every human has this potential? What if their entire species is capable of this level of resilience, this drive to succeed against all odds?" They had all seen the cadet endure and push through unimaginable pain, and the truth began to settle in. They had underestimated humanity. They had thought their advanced technology, their superior knowledge, would make them the ultimate species in the galaxy. But now they were confronted with something they couldn't explain, something they couldn't control. Rylor's voice broke through their thoughts. What if humans aren't just a threat because of their physical strength? What if their true power is their spirit? What if provoked, every human would become as dangerous as this cadet? Zethar paused, considering the possibility. "That's what I fear. This cadet may be the proof that humanity, when pushed far enough, can become something far more powerful than we ever anticipated." The more they talked about it, the more they realized how truly formidable humanity could become. The aliens had always viewed their own species as the pinnacle of evolution, their technology far superior to anything humans could dream of. But now, they were beginning to understand that there was something far more dangerous lurking within humanity. The cadet wasn't an anomaly. He was just the first to reveal the hidden potential of the human spirit. He was a symbol of something far larger. A species that, when faced with the darkest of odds, could rise up and conquer. The room fell quiet once again, but this time, it wasn't out of confusion. It was out of fear. The aliens had always believed that their intelligence and technology made them the superior force in the galaxy. Now they were beginning to wonder if they had made a grave mistake. The true strength of humanity wasn't something they could fight with weapons or technology. It was something that could never be defeated. The alien scientists were now grappling with a deep sense of unease. They had been trained to approach every species with logic, to break down and understand every element of biology, technology, and culture. They had never encountered a species like humanity. It was as though humans operated by an entirely different set of rules, one that could not be quantified or understood through traditional scientific methods. The cadet, having just completed another grueling series of tests and physical trials, sat in the observation room, quietly recovering. His body was battered and bruised, yet there was something unwavering in his eyes. It was a determination that even the most sophisticated machines in the lab couldn't replicate. The alien scientists had seen this kind of resilience before, but never on this scale. "How does he do it?" Jura asked, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and frustration. She had been one of the first to dismiss the human species as primitive and insignificant. Now, she wasn't so sure. Ryler, who had once believed that human tenacity was simply a byproduct of their animal instincts, was beginning to reconsider his assumptions. It's like there's a force inside him, something that refuses to let him break. No matter how hard we push him, he keeps going. Zethar paced back and forth, a deep furrow on his brow. We've tested their bodies, we've probed their biology, and yet nothing about them makes sense. Their endurance, their ability to withstand pain, the way their minds push them forward even when their bodies are broken. There's no logic to it. He paused, staring at the cadet through the reinforced glass window. The young human sat still, the only sign of his battle with exhaustion being the faint tremor in his hands. Yet his expression was calm, almost serene, as if he had mastered the art of enduring without ever surrendering. "Maybe it's not just about the body," Zethar muttered under his breath. "Maybe their strength comes from their will, from their need to protect, to survive, to defend everything they care about." The cadet looked up at that moment, as though he had heard Zethar's words. He locked eyes with the alien scientist for a brief second, a flash of understanding passing between them. The humans didn't just fight to survive. They fought to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. They fought for something larger than themselves. The alien scientists were slowly coming to terms with a terrifying realization. Humans weren't just a threat because of their physical strength. They were a threat because of their capacity to sacrifice, to endure, and to rise from the ashes of defeat. "Ryler," Zethar continued, his voice laced with a note of grim recognition, "we've underestimated humanity. This cadet, this single human, has shown us that our understanding of survival is incomplete. They don't just fight to win. They fight because losing isn't an option for them." Jura, always the skeptic, shook her head. "But they're weak compared to us. Our technology, our knowledge, we're far superior." Zethar looked at her with a somber expression. "You might be right. But strength isn't everything. This human cadet doesn't need advanced technology to survive. He doesn't need the best weapons, the most powerful machines. He has something far more dangerous. He has something inside him that drives him beyond the limits of his physical form. And if this one cadet can do it," Ryler said quietly, "then every human might have that same strength buried inside them. The power to keep fighting, no matter what." The thought sent a shiver down Zethar's spine. The implications were staggering. If every human carried this same potential, this same unbreakable spirit, then what was the galaxy facing? The alien team sat in stunned silence. Their superior knowledge and technology had once made them the unquestioned rulers of the galaxy. They had thought that no species could ever rise to challenge them. Now they were confronted with an enemy whose true power lay not in weapons or tech, but in something far more intangible, humanity's willpower. "We need to rethink everything," Zethar muttered. "If humanity can survive this, if they can endure even the worst we throw at them, then we might be facing an unstoppable force. They aren't just surviving. They're evolving in ways we can't predict. Jura leaned back in her chair, the weight of the realization sinking in. What if? What if this is only the beginning? What if their survival instinct is leading them to something greater, something we can't see yet? Ryler nodded, his gaze fixed on the cadet through the glass. If humanity ever learns to fully harness this strength, we may be facing the greatest challenge in the galaxy. Zethar closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the gravity of their situation settle over him. For the first time since the cadet's arrival, he felt the true weight of what they were up against. They had awakened something in humanity, something far more dangerous than they had ever anticipated. A species that could rise again and again, no matter how many times it was knocked down. A species that would never stop fighting, no matter the cost. And in that moment, Zethar understood. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. And soon, they would learn what true power looked like. The next day, the cadet was summoned to the heart of the alien research facility for the final set of tests. This time, however, the mood was different. The alien scientists, once so confident in their superiority, now approached the situation with a palpable sense of trepidation. What they had seen over the past few days had shaken them to their core, and they now understood that they were facing something completely beyond their comprehension. As the cadet entered the chamber, he could feel the tension in the air. It was different from the previous tests. The atmosphere was charged with an unspoken challenge, a final hurdle to prove whether humanity was truly capable of enduring what the galaxy had to offer. The alien scientists had prepared the most advanced simulations they had ever created. They had combined every known form of pain, every form of physical and mental stress, into one unrelenting scenario. Their hope was that this test would finally break the cadet, that it would prove once and for all that humans were simply too fragile to withstand the true horrors of the universe. They were wrong. The test began with simulated explosions, each one designed to rupture the cadet's internal organs, to blast him with forces far beyond what any human should be able to survive. The cadet was thrown to the ground, his body racked with pain, but he didn't scream. He didn't panic. He simply got up, his face twisted in concentration, his resolve clear. Jura, watching through the observation window, couldn't help but feel a rising sense of awe. He should be dead by now. No species should be able to withstand this. Ryler was equally stunned. We've thrown everything we can at him. This is impossible. The cadet pressed forward, despite the explosions, despite the pain. His movements were slow, labored, but they were unrelenting. With each step, the aliens realized something they hadn't considered before. Humanity's strength was not just physical. It was a mental and emotional force as well. The cadet didn't fight because he had to. He fought because he believed that no matter how grim the situation, there was always a chance to win. He fought for those who couldn't. Hours passed. The cadet's body was bruised, bloodied, his vision blurry from the constant barrage of pain. But there was something else happening. With every injury, with every bruise, his determination only seemed to grow stronger. His face, once full of pain, now radiated an eerie calm, as if he had transcended the physical world and was drawing strength from a deeper, more profound source. Zethar watched this with growing disbelief. "What is this?" he whispered under his breath. "How is he still moving? How is he still alive?" The cadet took another step forward, then another. The entire simulation crumbled around him, collapsing as though the universe itself was struggling to hold him down. And then, as if the very laws of reality had bent in his favor, the alien simulation shattered. The artificial world they had created disappeared, leaving only the cadet, standing tall amidst the wreckage. The alien scientists stood in stunned silence. They had seen many species fight, struggle, and die, but never before had they witnessed this level of resilience. Never before had they seen a species fight not just to survive, but to defy the very limits of nature itself. Xura turned to Ryler, her voice barely a whisper. "It's like he's unstoppable." Ryler nodded, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear. Maybe we've made a mistake. Maybe humanity isn't just another species to be controlled. Maybe they're a force that we can't comprehend." Zethar stood still, staring at the cadet, who was now breathing heavily but standing firm. The realization hit him like a thunderclap. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology, their armies, or their knowledge. It was their refusal to accept defeat. It was their endless drive to survive, to protect, and to endure. In that moment, Zethar understood the full extent of what humanity represented. They weren't just a threat. They were an existential force, an unstoppable tide that could wash over the galaxy and change everything. "We've underestimated them," Zethar said quietly, as if to himself. "All this time, we've thought of them as weak, as primitive, but now we see. They are the galaxy's greatest unknown." The cadet, despite his injuries, smiled faintly, as though sensing the alien scientist's realization. He had passed the test, but more importantly, he had proved something even deeper. Humanity would not be broken. No matter what challenges the galaxy threw at them, they would rise again. For the first time, the alien scientists felt true fear, not from their own technology or strength, but from the raw, unyielding spirit of humanity. They were no longer the hunters. Humanity had become the hunters, and the galaxy was the prey. As the cadets stood there, victorious, the alien scientists knew one thing for certain. The galaxy would never be the same again.